Hey guys, Michael Corsentino with my October 2018 lighting tutorial for Shutter Magazine. I'm excited about this tutorial. I recently focused on how to accomplish accent lighting with 4 lights, which was super cool and a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go back and check it out. But I really wanted to strip it back and pare down and show you, because not everyone has 4 lights, not everyone has 2 lights. I really wanted to show you what you can do with 1 light to accomplish a quasi accent light look with only 1 light. Right? So that's what this tutorial is all about. Okay, so let's dig right in. On the left, you're seeing where we started off, and on the right you're seeing the 2 images, center and right, where we ended up. And I'm going to walk you through the progression step by step of how we went from that very kind of bland looking, not so great looking image all the way to what I consider a very nice polished image that you could definitely sell or use for a client, and you only need to use 1 light to do it. We're going to add reflectors and fill, and we're going to do that without any additional lights. Okay, so that's the kind of cool thing. So let's dig right in and walk through how we did this. Okay, so the first thing that we did is we started off with 1 light, because we're working with 1 strobe for this particular project. So what you'll really see when you're working with 1 light or multiple lights, it really is about the modifier. So typically I would not start with a bare flash, but I wanted to show you what that looks like, because when you see that, it's only from seeing that that you can really start to to connect the dots and see how important modifiers really are in what you're doing and how critical they are in shaping and crafting the light that you get. Okay, so again, here is our 1 light bare flash, and that's the result. So not a very flattering result in my humble estimation. Okay, so let's move on to step number 2, which is where we introduce a beauty dish. In this case, I'm working with a Mola Demi beauty dish. It's a 22-inch beauty dish, and it's got a little perforated disc in front of the light, which lets some of the light through, but it kind of breaks it up and softens it a little bit. There's still some specularity because of the way that this beauty dish works, which is one of the things that I love about it. And you can see here that right away we've got a very, very different look. Okay, so if we go back to bare flash only, there's bare flash only. We've got some flare in there as well from the light kicking back into the camera, and now all of that is gone. We've got a much more crisp image. We've got a very a lovely image in and of itself, on its own. It's, you could definitely get by with this image if you had to, but we're going to take it even further. Okay, so that's bare flash and beauty dish. Next, we're going to introduce a sock in front of the beauty dish in order to soften its light and give it a different effect. And there you go. Okay, so there's with the sock. And that's just a diffusion screen, essentially, that you put on the front of the beauty dish. And that's kind of it's kind of a shower cap. A little bit of a pain in the butt to put on, but it really is worth the effort. So there's the difference. And you can see how it cut some of the light. It darkened up our background a little bit. We do have our light in our model several feet away from the background. And when you're working with 1 light, that is one of the ways that you have at your disposal to control the illumination on the background. So I'm going to show you, just by moving the entire grouping of the light and the model closer and further away from the background, we can change the illumination on the background, right? Because you're not using separate lights in order to accomplish that as you would when you're working with multiple lights. All right, so that is the beauty dish and the sock, and in this case, that was step number 3. All right, step number 4 is going to be keeping the beauty dish the same way that it was with the sock on it, but now we're adding in a reflector underneath the model, underneath her face, in order to open up the shadows in her eye sockets and under her chin. So you can see here that, and I'm using something called a Lastolite Triflector here, which is one of my favorite modifiers. And the reason that it is one of my favorite is because you can see that it has 3 different panels, which you can articulate separately, so you can really control exactly how much or how little fill light you have not only in the center of the model, but from side to side, left and right side. And we're going to bring those into play as we move through this. All right. You can also control the specularity in the level of contrast and the level of light that you have being reflected, because you have silver on one side and white on the other. Obviously, silver is going to reflect more light. It's going to give you more contrast, right? So right now I'm starting off with white. We've got only one white panel underneath the model's face, and you can see here that we have opened up those shadows. Let's go back to our before. That's just without and just with the Beauty Edition sock. And here is with. So we really opened things up, added a little bit more illumination onto the face as well. Again, a very lovely look right here without doing anything else. But again, we're going to take it even further. All right, so that was step number 4. Our next step is to fold those two panels in and see what we can get by adding a little bit of fill from side to side. And again, these fill elements that we're adding in are essentially acting like the accent lights that I used in our 4-light accent light setup, okay? But now we're doing it with reflectors. So really a much less expensive tool, albeit you don't have quite as much control. You can't really like turn it all the way up or turn it all the way down, but you can move it back and forward, and you can play with things like the fabric, whether it's silver or white, to control how much light you're putting back onto the subject. So even if you have one light, there's a lot that you can still do. All right, so that was step number 4. This is step number 5. Beauty dish, sock, white center reflector, and reflectors from the side. Okay, so we've got white all the way around in this instance. Now here I have changed things up. What I've done is I've swapped out the left and right reflector panels. I've used silver, and I've left the center panel white because I wanted to kind of play with it a little bit, season to taste, and see if I added a little bit more contrast side to side, what effect that would give me. And you'll see I'm going to do this in several steps throughout this process, is to play and to test and see how things work. It's never a straightforward path. You always have to kind of season to taste. It's like cooking, see what works and see what doesn't, and then you come to the final arrangement, which you'll see it's going to be different than what we have here, is what I'm going to end up with that produces the final result, right? Okay, so that is step number 6. Again, that is the beauty dish, the sock, and the white reflector. Now, what I did next, and I have this on the same slide here, is I added silver. So then we went with silver all the way around, 3 panels of silver. I've added the extra silver reflector because I really wanted to have a unified specularity and more light on the model's face. I wanted to see what that would give me, what that effect would give me, and I like it much better. You can see that there's more specularity on the model's face and that the model's face is brighter. Got a big shout out to our model, Jessica. She's awesome, from Modern Muse Models in Orlando. I work with those guys often, and she is a new face, and I think she's going to do just great. Okay, so that was step number 6. So for step number 7, what I did here was to now bring in extra fill. I wanted an even brighter look from side to side. So I brought in 2 V-flats. They're white V-flats. They're just large pieces of foam core. You can use insulation board from Home Depot, whatever works, but V-flats are really useful. And so here I've got 2 of them, one left and one right, and you can see here that it really brightens up the look of our model left and right. Now we still have, we're still a little bit ways off. It's hard to tell from this image, but we're still a little ways off from the background, which is a cyc wall. So that's why we're getting that kind of dove gray background look with only one light. And again, we're going to change that up. We're going to move everything closer to the background. You're going to see how that background is going to change to close to white, which is a really great trick when you only have one light. If you want a different background color, you just move everything closer. All right, so now we've got a very different look than we had before. Let's just go back to that first step before, and you can see here that just adding those V-flats left and right really opened things up. Everything else has remained the same. All right, so that was step number 7. Okay, so step number 8 is now I have moved everything closer because we're really starting to get into a look that I like. But what I've done here now is I have added in on the left a silver sunbounce reflector because I wanted to see what happens if I add a little bit more specularity on one side and not the other. Now I really liked the way that looked, but I wanted to do it even more. I I felt that even more specularity would be great. And especially with the white background, I wanted to kick as much light. I really wanted to reflect as much light onto the background as possible. Again, I'm only working with one light here and I'm trying to do a lot of things with it. So what I did was I added in another sun bounce reflector. I pulled out that V-flat, that white V-flat, and I added in a silver reflector on the right as well. So now we've got one on the right and one on the left. We've got the silver triflector panels from underneath. We've got our molybdenum beauty dish with our sock giving us our key light, right? And that's it. That is what we have, and it is really, really pretty looking light. Okay, so here's our overall final. This is what we ended up working with and what I kind of fell in love with. And then from here, I was able to either move this away from the background or close to the background in order to modulate the tone of the background, right? So let's take a look at that. Oops. So let's go here. Here is our first final shot. And you can see how the background is nice and bright white, nice and specular. Everything's looking nice and punchy and crispy. I like this look very much. And also this look was done with that same setup. And here, this is not reflected in the BTS shot, but we moved everything away from the background in order to darken up that background. Everything is exactly the same in terms of the modifiers used, the reflectors used, but we just pulled everything off the background, and that's why we're able to get that dark background happening, right? As I said, the distance of your light and everything else from the background is going to dictate the tone of the background. Okay. So here is, again, where we started off with our bare flash, and the two images center and right are where we ended up with, again, one light with a molybdenum beauty dish and silver reflectors left and right, and then silver reflectors underneath using that last light triflector, right? Okay, so let's take a look at a couple spreads. You guys know I like to finish off with spreads. So here's one spread with the sort of dove gray background and one with the nearly white background. And here's one with all the dove gray background shots. Well, there you go, guys. I hope that that inspires you about working with one light. Never feel like you don't have enough equipment. You can do a ton with one light and a good modifier. If you don't have a beauty dish, you can use an 8-in-1 convertible umbrella. You can use an Octabank. There's a lot of different ways to approach working with light. So just get out there and try and be creative and have fun with it. And I will see you next month here at BehindTheShutter.com and Shutter Magazine.